Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting to hear submissions on the draft budget for 2021-2022. Before we begin, on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Tonight is an informal meeting to hear submissions from the community on the draft budget for 2021-22. It is not a decision-making forum and we will not be making any decisions this evening. In total, 51 submissions were received for the Council's draft budget, including one which was withdrawn. Those submissions are requesting funding totalling $1,752,250. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be published to Council's website. Councillors, we haven't received any apologies for tonight's meeting, so I will now ask if any councillor has a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening. There being none, we will now move to the part of the meeting where we hear from submitters. So a total of 14 community members have registered to speak this evening. We have obviously a meeting afterwards as well, and to ensure that we run to time, each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak to their submission, and afterwards I'll ask councillors if they need to seek any clarification on the submission from the submitters. I would also note that councillors should be taking the reports presented to us as read. We've all been supplied with the submissions, so they will contain further information from what is spoken to tonight by our presenters. This meeting is being conducted by Zoom and the speakers are all joining us on Zoom. So for those that are already online, we welcome you. I will invite each presenter to speak in the order that they appear in the business papers. So our first speaker tonight is David Landgren, who is joined, I believe, by Karen Fogarty. David and Karen, you have 3 minutes to speak to your submission.
Thank you very much, Mayor and councillors, and I may share my screen. Good. And go to a quick slide to give you some background. Hopefully you can see that. If you could please acknowledge. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. A quick background on Essendon Hockey. We'll keep that brief because I think you know who we are now. And then we plan to share the submission, give you some clear knowledge as to why it's important now and why it's a good investment. And then happy to take any quick questions. Firstly, we're an organisation that's 900 members now, with 500 of those playing. We're down at the Hockey Lane in Ascot Vale. We're proud to not only be a club inclusive, but we're also very gender diverse, men, women, juniors and parents, ages 7 to 70. And important to note that we are a public access tenant with the council and public do have access to our grounds. What we're presenting tonight is actually part of a 2030 plan. Our board has a long-term plan for development of this asset of the councils, and this is the first element of it that we're sharing with you today. It is effectively the southern ground resurfacing project. I point to it with my pointer here. The southern ground next to Moonee Ponds Creek was first laid in 2019, and very importantly, in 2017, council resurfaced the northern ground with new technology to put a carpet directly over the old carpet, is the best way to explain it. This saved over $400,000 because we did not need to remove the old carpet and risk damaging the substrate of rubber and gravel. We propose to do that particular process again. I bring you to the attention that the ground is now well past its life. These typically have a life of 8 years. We're now into its 12th year of life, and it's actually being judged independently as actually unsuitable to play on presently. We're talking to you tonight about resurfacing it, We're only able to stretch its life to this point because effectively last year we played no competition hockey on it with COVID, you would understand, and we've been training and playing on it in a very limited fashion to extend its life. We've had proposals before council for the last 2 years to resurface this ground. It's now urgent. We believe that if we pitch this for project start in November, in the summer months, the hot months, where we can glue it in a dry opportunity, we can save around $380,000 at least, similar to what we saved in 2017. It would also enable us to share the wear. So we would have both grounds then compliant to Hockey Victoria surface requirements, and we could have high level as well as low level and community level games on the appropriate surface, enabling us to get better life out of the northern ground and share that wear over the next decade. The hockey community is one where we have the grounds available 12 months of the year. It would give us all weather surfaces, irrespective of the conditions we've seen ourselves in the last 24 hours. We could be playing hockey, could be playing any sports on these grounds that are suitable for the surface. We're a very gender diverse club. We're a pioneer in this area, and we're very much locked into the community with juniors, seniors, and masters of all ages and genders welcome. Other clubs,
David, sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off. We're just a minute over already. So okay. Obviously we've got the submissions presented, but if you're able to wrap up just in case there's any questions, that would be great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we're asking for $636 to be put into the November allocation or the 21-22 budget accordingly. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillors, any questions of clarification on either the submitted presentation, or the submission or the presentation? Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, and thanks, David, for the presentation. Is there any scope for additional funding from the state for this project?
There's potential scope for that. In fact, I'm chasing down that tomorrow. I have meetings with our state representatives to ask for that indeed. Yeah. And so I'm meeting with Danny Pearson and other members to ask that question.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, any other things clarified? Councillor Sypek.
Yeah, hi, David. I was just wondering, with some of our other clubs where they've had infrastructure done, they've actually done a bit of a, they've put some funding towards it themselves to the project. So would the club have any funding that they might be able to contribute to this project?
We have got very limited scope for that, John. Thanks for the question. We have still a debt of $225,000 on this ground, which we have to service. So we do intend to do that and pay that ground off, even though the surface may be changed. We have, for the last redevelopment, also contributed our own fundraising to seating, etc. And we plan to do the best we can for the things that have to happen around the ground. This area is something that we'd seek full support of.
And probably just to give my colleagues a bit of history about this club, you were one of the only clubs within Moonee Valley that actually took out a loan, which the council went guarantor for, and you've paid it off. So you are a good creditor, if we should say.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear that. In fact, over the years, we've borrowed over $1.8 million and paid it all back.
That's right.
And so we've been through pain, and now we're looking to have an asset for the whole community.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, David, for your presentation. Just a quick question to see whether you have explored any options like partnerships with local schools. I know Mount Alexander College is just up the road.
Yes, thank you, Katrina. That is an item on the agenda tomorrow. I think we can be a good place, particularly for primary schools during the day that could use the facility, as long as they're not playing golf on it, you can imagine. But it's a great all-weather surface that we would welcome to have primary schools and other schools use it. Some schools already use it for hockey, and we do make that available today. but we think it can be used for other non-destructive activities. And in an environment where schools are going up and there's no land available, we think we're a great candidate for that.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, David. How are you going?
Well, Narelle, thank you very much.
Just following on from Councillor Sypek's point about the loan, because I think the last installation that was done back in 17 also, we did it via a loan as well. That's correct, isn't it?
Back in 2017, no, it was fully funded by council. At that point, we had a loan of about $300,000. We're down to just under 225 now. So we continue to pay that loan off, so that there is no debt on the northern ground at all.
Okay.
Just on the southern ground.
Okay. All right. And the lease technically precludes. I think the lease technically says that you guys have to pay for infrastructure requirements. That's correct, isn't it?
All the maintenance costs are ours. That is correct, and we have maintained everything other than the parkland ourselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Parkland adjacent. So the care of the ground, the maintenance, the warranty is all in our scope. Correct.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. No other questions or clarifications? Thank you very much, David and Karen.
Thank you very much.
We'll now move to our second speaker, who is Alex Mungle. Alex, we'll just get David to end his screen share. Thank you. Alex, you have 3 minutes to speak to your budget submission.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. I asked at a previous meeting how you intend to make good on the climate emergency declaration to reduce Moonee Valley's emissions. At the time, I was unaware of the Green Action Plan. Now, I wish to know why you have a Green Action Plan, but I don't see action on that. In the current budget, it would seem to be the appropriate place to enact the plan. In this plan, I see sensible measures like improving access and connections to public transport and facilitating the uptake of electric and other efficient vehicles. Why aren't you doing this in the budget? For me, I have to wait too long between trams and buses west to east, or just rely on Uber after 9 p.m. Cycling this way is horribly dangerous, and I still see petrol stations being built without public EV charging facilities, which concerns me because I hope to purchase an EV. I don't see anything from you on reducing the grid demand from Moonee Valley residents, only offsetting the emissions from the council buildings. What about actually reducing the draw on the coal grid by council facilities, not offsetting it with green energy? How about encouraging and demonstrating the use of building materials recycled in our community and the establishment of businesses who can recycle our waste in our community? How about helping residents to reduce their emissions? An example of that would be prioritizing gas or car-free housing developments or passive solar house design to keep people warm in winter. I'm kind of shocked that the Green Plan does not specifically show the emissions sources in the community. How can the community measure its progress against that? As an example, you include a lot of building in this budget, and cement and concrete accounts for about 10% of emissions. Do you have a plan, I'd like to know, to reduce cement use in Moonee Valley? What I see in your climate work is hopeful. The purchase of 100% renewable energy by council is commendable, and thank you. The measures in the Green Plan seem to have been costed, but few seem to be acted on in this budget, and none state how much they will reduce Moonee Valley's emissions by. I'm concerned about this because in January 2020, we in Moonee Valley experienced the worst air quality in the world as unprecedented bushfires attacked on all sides, brought on by lightning strikes. we were wearing masks before the COVID crisis. At the time, I had a house guest urgently return to Germany because she did not want to expose her baby to our air quality in Moonee Valley. Lightning strikes increased.
Sorry, Alex, we just your time's all expired. Just get you to finish off if possible.
Yeah, well, lightning strikes increased by 7% for every 1 degree of warming. So what I'm asking is, why haven't you included a plan to contribute to lessening Moonee Valley's residents' contribution to global heating in this budget when we know we are amongst the most vulnerable communities?
Thank you, Alex. Councillors, any questions or clarifications to Alex's submission or presentation? No, if not, Alex, thank you for joining us and thank you for submitting to our draft budget.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Marianne Talgrossi-Hull. Marianne, thank you for submission. You have 3 minutes to present.
Great. Hopefully I won't need that much. So I was really looking at the budget more from areas that we could look to improve. And what was apparent to me is that 50% of the budget is actually allocated to resourcing. And when I broke that down to look at the average resourcing cost based on the number of resources employed at MVCC, it was 92,000 as an average salary. And that's not considering that a third of the employees are actually part-time. So if you look at the part-time and actually say for every 2 part-time, assume 1 full-time employee, the average salary actually increases to circa 120K, which is, significantly above the national average. So I'm not suggesting a blanket, reduction in everyone's salary. That's not the intent of this, but it's certainly something that can be looked at in terms of future employees. So looking at actually the bandwidths and understanding how Moonee Valley actually compares nationally in terms of salaries, and certainly looking at some of the individuals that are earning, say, in the higher bracket, because there wasn't really a breakdown in the budget, and perhaps implementing a performance-based remuneration, a component where we look, there's a possibility to, say, reducing their salary by 5% as an example, to kind of free up funding that could be allocated to other initiatives. So that's basically the inquiry or kind of suggestion that I had.
Thank you, Marianne. Councillors, any questions or clarifications from Marianne on her submission or presentation?
Mayor, so Marianne, can I just ask, are you seeking council to cut the wages of its staff? Is that?
No, that's certainly not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that we kind of review the remuneration model for future employment. So for anyone that you newly employ, and to potentially look at that top bracket of staff that are earning well above, because if I looked at the average, it's 120K per individual, right? Which is well above the 90K national average. So there's obviously individuals at Moonee Valley that are earning well above that 120K. So perhaps look at that top 5% and consider moving them on to a portion of their salary being performance-based, where in unity with many of the other constituents who perhaps have lost their employment or have had an impact to their employment because of COVID, as an example, they might themselves volunteer to take a 5% cut. So again, this is coming from the salaries make up 50% of the budget, right? So you've got constituents paying rates, and 50% of those rates are just going to salaries, where the average of the salaries for MVCC is 120K, and the Australian national average is 89K annually.
Thanks, Marianne. Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Any other questions? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks for your presentation. In relation to wages and operational staff, it's not something that us as a council can manage. It's managed by the CEO. but I'd really appreciate your feedback and your ideas, and perhaps that's something you can forward to the CEO, Helen Sway.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Yep. Any other questions or clarifications? If not, Marianne, thank you for your submission and your presentation. Our next speaker is Nina Franceschi. Nina, you have 3 minutes to present to your budget submission.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, yep, we got
Okay.
it.
I'm just going to share the screen. Can you just give me 1 second? Okay, can you see it?
Yes, yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, okay, so the submission is for funding for this draft budget to protect the Moonee Ponds Creek Reserve along Mascoma Street, Strathmore. I did a presentation not that long ago, so you would all be familiar with it. The submission is actually from myself, but Anna helped me and feels very strongly about this as well. So Anna Lanigan, which you all know, helped me along. So despite signs all along Mascoma Street, Strathmore, informing the public that parking on the Moonee Ponds Creek Reserve is illegal, the signs alone do not work. What we need is a barrier along the road edge that prevents cars from encroaching on the reserve. We therefore request that funds are made available in this budget to achieve this aim. Here is proof of the total disregard motorists have of the signs that should prevent parking on our creek reserves. This was taken at Strathmore Reserve. This is the result of cars parking illegally on the creek reserve. It results in erosion, soil compression, damage to adjacent vegetation, and a dangerous combination of water and mud on Mascoma Street, including tight corners. Here's the damage. The damage continues all along the unprotected reserves in Mascoma Street. So here we have Strathmore North Primary School on the 2 photos on the left. And on the right is Lebanon Reserve. So it's a problem all down Mascoma Street. We also, to compound the problem, unprotected reserves become a dumping ground, not only with household rubbish and garden waste, but debris from builders and even misused by council's own contractors. So again, this week, not on this location, but in Brosnan Crescent, we had a truck dump a heap of concrete sludge. He was a council contractor as well, so I'm not happy about that. So here's the size of the problem. It's actually quite small. The length of Mascoma Street is the yellow line. The red section is the section that we would like protected. The sites that have been protected, this purple section up here on the left, that's Boeing Reserve. They don't have any, they don't have issues with rubbish or illegal car parking. And down here to the far right is Lebanon Reserve, which already has bollards, but we need more and we need it reviewed, the whole section reviewed. Here's some examples of low-cost solutions that work. We're happy with any of these, preferably something more permanent, probably like logs. Even this bottom left-hand corner would be great, but something that's permanent. So I took these photos today, the 5 or 6 that I'm going to show you now. So this is along the section that I would like bollarded. This actually was done, these works were done today by the guys, Mark the one of the workers, and I'm not sure who. Anyway, there was 3 guys. One of them was called Mark, and they were working very hard to dig holes ready for some plantings. So here's this is actually. Might
have to go just one more photo because we're over time.
Okay. Yep. So I won't even talk. I'm just going to show you the photos, and that's it. All the photos. So in conclusion, we believe funding should be granted to install barriers along the unprotected reserve from Strathmore Reserve Access Road to Strathmore North Primary School and Lebanon Reserve current bollards reviewed. It doesn't have to be an expensive exercise. We recommend low-cost bollards to prevent cars being illegally parked on reserves. And protection measures work, like we saw in Boeing Reserve cars that are not parked anywhere in Moonee Valley where bollards are in place. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nina. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Clarifications? I might just get you to stop your screen share so I can get gallery view good. Councillor Isa?
Nina, thanks for that. I'm just curious as to whether landscaping solutions would be an option that you think might work, like the rocks and logs and trees, the more naturalistic type approach.
I think logs and rocks will, but yeah, it's. I think in some sections, like near the school, you could put rocks and logs. Further up, maybe no. Sorry, I think you probably could get away with less, but I can't imagine the whole street filled with logs and rocks. I'm not sure whether. Yeah, I'm not really sure, but it's not like forming a proper barrier, like a barrier where a car can't come in. So we like the idea of rocks and logs providing a car can't get in there, or heavy enough to not be moved. Yeah.
Nina, thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other questions, councillors? If not, Nina, thank you for your submission and your presentation. Our next speakers are Bob Muntz and Rhonda Pryor. Bob and Rhonda, you have 3 minutes to speak to your budget submission.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Cam. Well, I'm a member of the Moonee Valley Greens, along with Bob, who'll be speaking with you in a moment, and we really appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk to you about the budget. So thank you. We're also very aware that the council has been very progressive around the issue of the climate crisis, particularly in the resolution that you adopted back in 2019. So thank you very much for that. The Moonee Valley Greens really appreciate it. We just really wanted to talk to you today about the budget as it stands at the moment doesn't seem to reflect some of the commitments that the council has made. And Bob would probably like to go into greater detail about that. So I'll hand it over to Bob, but thank you again for letting us talk to you tonight. It's much appreciated.
Okay, thanks, Rhonda. I think the problem from our perspective with the budget is that despite all the work that's been done over a decade and in promoting rooftop renewables and that sort of thing, and the excellent green section, the Green Action Plan in MV 2040, that this budget doesn't reflect all that good work that has been done. And our written submission to you would just emphasises that. And we could, so we need to recognise, I think, that climate change is a whole of action matter, and as such it needs to be reflected adequately and broadly within the budget. Just how you might like to do that, we'd leave up to the council officers, who I'm sure would be able to handle that. But we think, however it's done, the objectives so well outlined in MV 2040 in the Green Action Plan, particularly the interim targets for 2025 and 2030, they're very much a matter for consideration in this budget, and the budget should reflect that with an appropriate emphasis on a climate action objective. Lastly, we mention just a few possible ways that council might expand its considerable work it's done in the past to better achieve those objectives. And a couple of these could be looking at how best to phase out the use of gas as an energy source in council buildings and in the community. Other councils have taken this up with an objective of replacing gas in leisure centres and other council activities by 2025, and suggest this could be a consideration for starting an initiative like that in the current budget. Another one is electric car use in Moonee Valley. We're pleased to see that the budget does somewhere provide provision for council buying electric cars in the immediate future. And once again, that would take more than one budget to achieve any worthwhile objectives in electric car use, both by council and by the community of Moonee Valley. and it would be a multi-year objective. But that's something that could be flagged and at least make provision for beginning that sort of work in the current budget. There's probably
so just a minute over, so I just want to make sure that there's time for questions as well. So
okay, I'll leave it there then.
And we have your full submission as well. Councillors, any questions or clarifications from Bob or Rhonda on their budget submission or presentation? Councillor Isa?
Thanks, Bob and Rhonda. Good to see you both. I was just wondering how you felt the getting off gas as opposed to, I mean, if we've got limited money to spend, getting off gas as opposed to solar panel spend, where would you prefer council to be putting some money if our resources are limited?
We recognise that resources will always be limited, I think, but that's why perhaps getting off council gas use in council activities would have to be a multi-year objective. But I think that would be the first phase of what is, I think, a very important objective, and it's become getting off gas has become more important and recognised over the last couple of years since the climate emergency resolution, and that's could be done over a multi-year period, and some consideration could be given to promoting that within the Moonee Valley community as well, in the way that promoting solar panels was done so well 10 years ago.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Councillor Isa. Any other questions or clarifications? If not, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Rhonda, for your submission and your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks to the council for listening to us.
Our next speaker this evening is Zach Lewis. Zach is online. Zach, you have 3 minutes to present to your budget submission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for taking the time. I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you. You've obviously received my submission. I sent it on a brief background paper to you, so I'll keep this brief. Look, Western Chance has been around for about 17 years now. We were originally founded by Terry Bracks to help students that are facing financial barriers continue their education. And I think it's pretty apt tonight that we're all meeting on Zoom while we're all stuck in lockdown here in Melbourne, because I think it just really brings home for me that lockdown has had such a big impact on our young people right across Western Melbourne, including in Moonee Valley. We're hearing, our scholarship recipients are telling us, there's more expenses in terms of their education through digital inclusion. They have to pay for, internet and laptops. A lot of our students are having to take on care duties for other siblings as their parents or they have lost work. So they're having to contribute a lot more to the household, and this is affecting their education. So fundamentally at our heart, we're a scholarship foundation. We provide scholarships to students between the ages of 12 and 25 attending state schools. And in Moonee Valley, we work with 4 key schools. I think that is Buckley Park, Essendon Keilor, Mount Alexander and Rose Hill Secondary. And really what we're trying to do is obviously provide financial support, but link these students into a whole range of educational and skills development opportunities that they just would not otherwise be able to afford. And ultimately, the end goal is to make them achieve their education and become more employable. So COVID's really impacted our program in 2 ways. The first is that we rely on the generous support of a network of donors, and that support has diminished somewhat. And the second is that the need in the community is increasing. COVID, we're the epicenter of COVID in Western Melbourne here, in the second outbreak in Australia, and that's had such a flow-on impact on families. So already our scholarship applications are up about 10% this year from last year, and we've just finished our tertiary scholarship round, our renewal round, and I think we're awarding 314 scholarships, which is nearly a 15% jump on the same category last year. So there's a really big need in the community. So I guess I'm calling on the local councils across Western Melbourne, including Moonee Valley, to assist us empower young people by providing a small grant over 3 years to help support our work. That grant will be used to directly fund scholarships in Moonee Valley. So the $30,000 will fund 27 scholarships in Moonee Valley per year over 3 years. We take, there's about a 15% administration cost in delivering that program. So I can see that red flashing timer. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to just let me know.
Thank you, Zach. Councillors, any questions on the submission? Councillor Tyson?
Thanks for your submission, Zach. I just wondered if you could tell me how the scholarships work. Like, is it just a financial contribution? Is it for books, or how does it work?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Great question. So essentially our scholarships, the average amount of our scholarships is about $1,000, slightly under. And what they fund is small items which we think have a big impact on people's education. So the highest categories of items that we fund are textbooks, home internet and laptops, and Mikey passes, so transport, so that students can get to and from school and to other educational opportunities. So we work directly with schools. We call it schools our talent scouts. They identify students that have financial need, that are also motivated and talented, that we can then work with to provide a scholarship. So that's the financial component. But I think one thing that we do very well is that once we've awarded a scholarship, we then just link that recipient into a whole range of other opportunities that we work across our network with to provide. So for example, we work with Trinity College at the University of Melbourne to provide the Young Leadership program that they run, which is a 1-week residential leadership program to students for free. That's an opportunity that a lot of our recipients describe as life-changing. When they're in year 10 and 11, they get this, influx of information and ideas, and just even an understanding of what is possible, which is particularly important for some students that might come from a family where no one's been to university before, or they might be, first generation Australian and not are fully aware of the opportunities at their disposal. So there's financial, but we also really bring our network to bear to provide opportunities for those students. And I know I've spoken a little bit long here, but just one thing I will mention is that I think the thing that struck me, I'm fairly new to Western Chances, is that the belief that students get in themselves from having an organisation provide them with a scholarship is huge. And I think, for me, I think it's just as powerful as the financial support.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillors, any other questions on the submission or presentation? If not, thank you very much, Zach. Our next speaker is Leo Italiano. Leo, you have 3 minutes to speak to your budget submission.
A very good evening to everybody, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present. Most of you
might just get the, can we get the volume up a little bit there, or where's your mic, Leo?
Yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, that's better. Yep.
Excellent. So thanks again for allowing me to present tonight. The majority of you know our plight very well. You're all very familiar with the with our wonderful pavilion there at J.A. Fulton at Aberfeldy Park, 99 years of age. And very, very, very much in need of health and safety makeover. Not necessarily after something new and shiny, just something that's safe and sort of healthy. A lot of asbestos in the roof, and very, very, very dilapidated. We're a growing club. We've got senior men's, senior women's, junior kids, including boys and girls. We are doing everything we can to really grow and shape our club. We're in the process of changing our name. It'll all become official this evening, but I'm very happy to announce to you all that us and Essendon United Soccer Club will be forming the Moonee Ponds Sporting Club. So in light of what's going on in the municipality at the moment with the summer and winter tenants, we're going to buck that trend a little bit. We're going to unify our forces, and we're going to prove that soccer and cricket can get along. We'll be the Moonee Ponds Cricket Club. They'll be the Moonee Ponds Soccer Club, and together we will be the Moonee Ponds Sporting Club. So we are hoping that we can get some support. However big or little it may be, obviously the ultimate is the new pavilion. Might not be able to happen in this upcoming budget, but if we can do something to try and upgrade our facilities, that'd be wonderful. I know I've only got a minute left, so I'll quickly jump from that to the nets. They really are a safety hazard. It's not through design, it's purely through luck that somebody hasn't been seriously injured down there. I'm hoping that the majority of you will have seen the email that I emailed out to you guys late last week. Proposition there for the nets. There's $15,000 allocated in the budget for the planning of our new nets, potentially for next season. Yeah, if we can throw another 25k behind that, we can make those nets not only safe, but something that we can use long term. It would then take the pressure off council to try and find that money. So trying to come to you guys with some alternative ways of trying to, more than one way to skin the cat, I suppose. Try not to be the squeaky wheel, but at the same time, probably have to be a little bit squeakier than we have been in the past. So that's the pitch. Song and dance or something memorable, but that's us.
Thanks, Leo. Councillors, any questions on the budget submission or the presentation? No? If not, thank you very much for joining us, Leo.
No worries. All very short and sweet.
Yeah. Now, our next speaker is Doug Mosley, but we haven't got Doug online yet. So, Maria, let me just... so we got, okay, there we go. Phil and Dennis, Phil Clough and Dennis James, Strathmore Sports Club are online. You have 3 minutes to present to your budget submission.
Welcome to Bowling Reserve. This is Strathmore Football Club's change rooms, and our ground's on the other side.
These are our change rooms, and they only have temporary walls. This is the opposition room, and the umpires have to go through there. We all share the same space. These are the umpires rooms. However, you have to walk through the opposition's change rooms in order to get here. These are the umpires' toilets. Both female and males have to share. These are the women's toilets that both teams have to share. We have an open shower and only 2 toilets. Overall, there's no privacy, the doors don't lock, and there's no way to change.
It's not great for girls' footy.
These are the men's toilets that both teams have to share. They have open showers and only 1 toilet.
During the game, if I need to go to the toilet, I need to go out of that side of my parents or bring my parents with me to go to the toilets which are on the other side.
Another point to make is we have no disabled toilets throughout the whole facility. This is our canteen, and everyone has to line up in front of the room. To get to our ground, this is what we've got to do. We really need access to our ground because this is unsafe.
This is where we sit when we're on the bench. We'd really love a player's shelter.
We'd love for our grandparents to come watch, but they have to get up this dirt hill.
That's the end of the video. Thank you.
Brilliant work by the girls. Now, have you got a minute?
Thanks, Mayor and councillors and officers. Thanks for allowing this briefing of our 28th of May Bowling Reserve budget submission. I'm Secretary of Strathmore Sports Club, and Phil Clough is Director of our junior football group, and he's accompanying me. Phil also prepared the submission. As background, over the last decade, our 1,200 male and female football, netball and cricket club members have benefited from staged processes by council and our sports club, with excellent upgrades resulting at our long-term homes at Lebanon and Strathmore Reserves. These facilities now cater for the explosion in our number of players, in particular huge growth in female participation. Referring to Bowling Reserve that we have continuously used for around 30 years, we bring to your attention its amenities for female and male athletes have been left behind compared to modern standards and guidelines. Our budget submission seeks funding on a staged basis to jointly assess in financial year 21-22 the facility and improvement options, then submit a budget application for the required upgrade and or rebuild in financial year 22-23. Our submission also identifies funds required at Boeing to urgently address a number of accidents waiting to happen from a health and safety perspective. Happy to answer any questions or meet with you in the future.
Thank you. Well done, Dennis, to get through it in the minute. Councillors, any questions on the submission or the presentation? Councillor Adams. Microphone.
Sorry, guys. No questions. I've just got a comment of that is probably the best budget submission I've seen. And yeah, well done to everyone for that. That was great.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions on the submission?
I just had a real quick one. Just thanks for your presentation. Obviously, there were a number of issues brought up there, and a lot of that would have to be done wholesale as part of a pavilion upgrade. I was just wondering, are there any sort of smaller projects that could be done separately or in the meantime if the whole amount wasn't successful? I noted the the player shelter as an example.
Look, the first safety comes first, of course, and I believe it's 30,000 we've requested in the new financial year as a matter of urgency to make good some safety issues, slip hazards, trip hazards, and the like. The 80,000 is for obviously an architect, a building surveyor, whatever, to assess jointly with us what are the options, how much can be renovated, how much what's got to be knocked over, similar to what you do with other assessments. So we're happy to wait next year, do the assessment, and the following financial year, hopefully get approval to do the rebuild.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks.
Councillor Tyson, any other questions or clarifications? If not, Dennis, Phil and the Strathmore girls, thank you very much for your budget submission and presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Our next presentation or speaker is Michael Angley. Michael, you've got 3 minutes to speak to your budget submission.
Yeah, good evening. I don't think I'll need all 3 minutes. I just want to make just a general comment. Obviously, COVID's been difficult for a lot of us, but there have been some good aspects of it. I look out my window, see family groups walking each night. I see a lot less cars on the road. I see a lot more people shopping and entertainment in the local area. And I don't see any of that reflected in the budget to try and to quote Joe Biden, to come back better. I think there's always a lot of talk about extra bike lanes. It's been going on for years and years. It's still very difficult for us I live in the centre of Moonee Ponds, to get down Mount Alexander Road safely, as an example. Obviously, the bus terminal gets forever talked about. I just don't see any of that in the budget. So that's the guts of my presentation.
Thanks, Michael. Councillors, any questions on Michael's submission or presentation? Councillor Isa?
Mike, thanks for that. I thought you made a really interesting point, and it's a really interesting observation about to what extent our budget might reflect some of the experiences of COVID. And if there wasn't something particular that you wanted to necessarily get us to turn our minds to a little bit more, I think it's generally an interesting reflection that we can take away. But was there something quite specific we could?
Yeah, I guess probably two specific things. I really think options to get away from car usage. So, I mean, I would like to see more bike riding facilities. But I think the other thing is to think about, I like the idea of the restaurants being able to occupy car park spaces and whatever. I really think we should think about maybe the end of some streets being blocked off to create little local parks, to create that neighbourhood interaction that I saw arising during COVID. It would not, there are many quiet streets within the council where it wouldn't hurt if you had to do a U-turn and go up a different street, as an example.
Thanks,
Thanks, Mike. That's a great idea.
Any other questions for Michael? If not, Michael, thank you for your submission and your presentation.
Thank you. Bye.
Our next presenter is Zoe Edwards. Zoe, you've got 3 minutes to speak to your budget submission.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. My name is Zoe Edwards. I'm from the ASU and I'm here to represent Moonee Valley employees. So our members are the lowest paid workers at Moonee Valley. We represent everyone ranging from frontline workers at the depot, on-street compliance, home and community care, libraries, childcare staff, through to the staff in the Civic Centre, and including those providing administrative support tonight. And thank you for your work. The ASU has made a budget submission regarding the funding allocated to employee costs in the draft budget. And we acknowledge that councillors are not responsible for staffing matters. However, in setting the budget, you are responsible for determining the bucket, to use a technical term, of money that can then be spent on staffing. So the ASU is here tonight because the bucket proposed in the draft budget is not sufficient to ensure that staff are provided with a fair wage increase. So council officers have advised us that the draft budget provides for a wage increase of just 1.15%, and that pay increase will make it difficult for our members to make ends meet. There's a common misconception that local government workers are well paid, and certainly that may be the case for executive staff, but our members, those covered by the enterprise agreement, are not this. So by way of example, a worker in the depot or in our libraries salary starts at $61,000. The frontline customer service staff who might assist you on the phone or in the Civic Centre, and our hardworking parking officers are paid a starting salary of $67,000. So for these workers, the pay rises they receive each year ensures that wages keep pace with cost of living, their rents, mortgages, and just the basics like putting food on the table. So the proposed pay rise of 1.15% isn't adequate to do this. And it seems particularly unjust when councillors voted themselves a 2.5% pay rise this year. We think Moonee Valley employees are worth the same amount that you pay yourselves. So we understand COVID presents financial challenges for the council. However, there are funds available. We've identified just a few in our budget submission. The quarterly financial statement projects an underspend of $2.07 million in employee costs this financial year. And the council is proposing to increase costs for consultants and professional services by as much as 30%, which is an increase of $1.3 million. We think this money would be better invested in staff wages. We've also provided a recommendation about investing the surplus of $911,000 that we think should be dedicated to a COVID recognition fund for those workers, in the depot, on-street compliance, libraries, community services who supported people in the flats last year during the lockdown, they all had a particularly difficult time during the lockdown because they couldn't work from home and they put their own health and safety at risk serving our community through the lockdowns this year, and we think they deserve some additional recognition. So thank you. I've made time. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Zoe, councillors, any questions on the submission or the budget presentation? If not, Zoe, thank you for presenting this evening.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Our next speaker is Wendy Taylor. Wendy is online. Wendy, you have 3 minutes to speak to your budget submission.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Nation. So thanks for the opportunity. I'm requesting that you consider allocating an additional $10,000 to $15,000 in the budget to enable a small neighbourhood park to be upgraded into a little mini pocket park. $10,000 would be adequate to fund a picnic table or perhaps a low bench, 2 water efficient wicker baskets and some low landscaping down the side. I put a cost breakdown on page 1 of the submission. An additional $3,000 to $5,000 is an estimated cost for a water tap for the wicker beds. I've been told some of the enhancements can actually be covered under this year's operational budget under the Greening Neighbourhood Program, but not all of them. Staff in this team obviously have deep knowledge and commitment to greening, so we're really pleased that they're interested in our small space. But they can't fund the items I've just mentioned. Now, this request, it is based on a short survey that was done with residents. A group of very enthusiastic residents have indicated that they will pay for the citrus trees and the veggie beds. The Moonee Council horticultural team, they currently maintain this green space, and we appreciate how frequently and reliably this team, they mow and care for it. Even today, good old Con was there out in the freezing drizzle with his mask on, raking up all the leaves. So we're well aware that any additional planting would have an impact on the maintenance team, but we really don't think it would add to their time, given the landscaping would be low maintenance and the community would do the veggie veg. I'll just quickly show you some pictures. Share screen. Okay, so this is Unley Grove here. This is the pocket. It's near around the corner from the railway station. This is the small green space. As you'll see, it's fairly mono planting at the moment, and there's a chair here that faces out towards the road. Now, I just want to show you, this is a map that one of the residents did. He does a lot of CAD work, just to show you we're not talking about changing anything significantly in the layout. It is simply adding some citrus trees, some garden beds, and making it safer down here with some landscaping.
Thank you.
Okay, have I got 1 minute?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Okay, finally, the concern that people did have was around road safety. So I would also like to request that in the budget allocated to upgrading local roads, whether the Unley Grove pocket could be considered as well, please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wendy. Councillors, any questions on Wendy's budget submission? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks so much, Wendy, and really a lot of work went into that submission, so thank you. I just wondered if you know, you mentioned that some of the budget might be able to be accommodated within the current operational budget. Do you have any more details around what aspects that would be?
Okay, I added some of the details in the submission. They could add some basic landscaping and some habitat rocks in the garden beds. They could relocate the bench, so the seat could be relocated. And there was one other thing, sorry. No, it was and trees. But that wouldn't be, that would be if we wanted some native trees, whereas we're looking at some citrus trees.
Thank you. And does that affect the bottom line of the request, or is it hasn't, it's still sort of in the 10 to 15,000?
I think that would be really a maximum. I did the costings. A bench can be up to about $2,000. And I got a quote from a supplier who does provide councils. So it's mainly in the bench and the wicker bud beds. I costed them at $1,500, and then there's the landscaping. I put a fairly generous allowance for the landscaping, and as I put in brackets, I think it would be lower than that, but because labour is so costly with landscaping, I put it higher. The water tap would be an issue. The 3 to 4 hours in turn, 3 to 4,000 is an estimate of the water tap, but we would support it if we don't get support for the water tap. The community would support watering the garden beds.
Thanks, Wendy.
Councillor Hodgson, any other questions on the submission? If not, Wendy, thank you very much for your submission and your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Our final speaker this evening is Antonella Kerr, President of Football Victoria, speaking to the submission of Josephine Lapilla. Antonella, you have 3 minutes to present to your budget submission.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr Mayor and councillors. I am here this evening representing Football Victoria, and I respectfully and formally request that Council reconsider the decision made at the previous Council meeting rejecting the proposed football strategy. In having rejected the proposal, Council is actually relying on a 2012 football policy, which, with all due respect, is actually redundant. In 2020, there were 1,192 registered players. This season, there are 1,639, and that number does not actually account for the junior programs in play. That's over 1,600 participants crammed into 6 clubs with only 1 compliant ground, which actually happens to be a privately owned facility. Essendon Royals alone had 475 registrations in 2010 compared to 671 players this year. That's a 25% increase in female footballers. The participation for women and girls in Moonee Valley has increased by 126% and is actually projected to reach over 150% over the next 2 years. And that's a limited number and projected only on the Women's World Cup 23. So we expect a hell of a lot more. Current facilities are limited for space. They actually discriminate against women and girls because of the state and lack of change rooms and have limited capacity for usage due to the absence of lighting. What is needed ideally is a designated facility that acts as a football hub, one which can accommodate female-friendly change rooms, 4 pitches, 2 full-sized and 2 junior grounds with ancillary services to accommodate the entire community. Moonee Valley currently boasts teams that play and others that aspire to play at NPL level. In order to retain that status, Football Australia mandates minimum requirements for facilities that are currently unable to be fully met, let alone the poor state of the community club facilities within our municipality. The proposal submitted by Essendon Royals does go a long way in relieving concerns with the current unsuitability of playing areas. It also provides an opportunity for shared use of pitches at Ormond Park, which ideally is a win-win for the entire community. Removing 700 participants and 95 training sessions per week from Cross Keys to accommodate an overflow cricket game will have a far greater impact on the community than a scheduling conflict. Respectfully, your role as representatives of Moonee Valley and mine, not only as a local resident of Moonee Ponds for the last 20 years, but as the first ever female president of Football Victoria, representing 365 clubs, is to work together in an effort to find a suitable solution. Our united purpose is to maintain health and wellbeing opportunities for the children and residents of Moonee Valley. And as you well know, disruptions to physical activity and its direct impact to mental health were strongly documented as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. The football community has already had to suffer its season being decimated in 2020, and we are now facing the reality of a reduced season in 2021. Should some 2,000 participants in the extended football community really continue to be penalised for wanting to enjoy the World Game in inappropriate surroundings? That is fundamentally the conclusion of my statement. I thank you for your time this evening, and I honestly look forward to reinstating constructive discussions for football.
Thank you, Antonella. Any questions or clarifications on the budget submission or presentation? Councillor Bedio.
Hi, Antonella. Thanks for your presentation tonight. Just for your information as well. So, Council on Tuesday moved to support a soccer strategy or the development of a new soccer strategy and pledged, I think it was $50,000, was it, councillors? As per the motion to get the new strategy moving forward. So that is in the works.
Fabulous. Football Victoria would be more than happy to work with you in getting that well and truly underway, and anything we can do to support would be more than happy to recommend.
Fantastic. Any other questions or clarifications, councillors? If not, Antonella, and on behalf of Josephine, thank you very much for your submission and presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Our final presenter is Doug Mosley, who was speaking earlier, and I don't think we have Doug with us. It doesn't look like the case. So that concludes the hearing of submissions on the draft budget 2021-22. We greatly appreciate the input from our community, both those that have submitted and of course those that have submitted and spoken to their submissions this evening. All submissions will be considered as part of the final budget deliberations with our final budget for 2021-22 due to be moved at a council meeting on Thursday, the 24th of June. That concludes our meeting this evening. Good night. Councillors, resuming the budget submission meeting, we now need a recommendation. Councillors, can I have a recommendation? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move that Council receives and note the submissions on the proposed annual budget 2021 to 2022 and draft revenue and rating plan 2021 as provided in attachment 5.1.1.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. A seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Isa, wish to speak to the motion?
Only to thank the 49 submitters for making their submissions and for the 16 who presented to us this evening. Thanks very much for your time and effort.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Bedio. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. That concludes the reports and business on tonight's meeting. Thank you and good night.